Welcome to the Geek Geek podcast, where Home Sweet Home is the name of the game this week. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host Beej.
Not a lot has changed for me.
No, we're home still, as is most of you, as are most of you, as is most of the world. I had a couple thoughts there, and I blended them together. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way of the world this week. So we want to talk a little bit about what we've been doing, just kind of like geekery catch up, and like what are we doing when we're stuck at home during this pandemic. And yeah, but before we get into that, you know, and it's kind of just an expanded geekery, but also just, you know, we're a little bit more confined than normal. I did want to mention that I feel like I'm addicted to the news in a really bad way. And that's probably something that I've been spending way too much time on it.
Yeah. Oh man, the number of apps that I've just downloaded, or the time I've spent through just like scrolling through Facebook for different news stories, and like it's not healthy for me. The amount of news and just different reporting that I've consumed over the last week.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like we all want direction. We all want to know what's going on, and it's probably bad. I probably should not be looking at the news as much as I am, but I keep doing it anyway. It's like, you know, I put the news away. I'm like, I shouldn't look at that for a while, and then I look at it again. And, you know, I'm not going to beat up myself too much about it because I feel like everybody's in this situation, but that's why we want to talk about other things that we have been doing, other things you could be doing to look away from the news and kind of dive into. So yeah, what have you been doing?
Well, one of the things about this, like Jennifer was talking to me about this last week, and just stuff like this is when we need to actually be around people and like play games with people. So she and I started up Luigi's Mansion 3 again and finally beat it. Like we beat the story, we got through all of the floors in the hotel, and the only thing we have to do now is go back and forth and get the like booze and collect all the gems and extra stuff in it. We really loved this game. You never went back to it, did you?
No, I was stuck in that one spot, and then I went on to other things, and I just never went back.
It's so good. Like the game overall, like once that one part is the absolute worst part of the game. Like where you stopped, if I'd been solo, I absolutely would have stopped there. It's a garbage boss fight. Having it in co-op was great to be able to move past it. But the last two floors of this game which is where we had stopped. We had made sure that we had stopped at the last two floors, and when we went back, we just had those to complete. And they were really disappointing compared to the others. It's just like there wasn't nearly as much to explore and do. They were very short and very straightforward. So we had fun with them going back, but the first part of the game, the first like 13 stories are so much better than the others, than the last two, but such a good game. Like playing it co-op is absolutely the way to go.
Yeah, I think that's what I need to do. I need to go back and play co-op, and I've heard nothing but good things about the rest of that game. I just got stuck. I probably just need to look up a walkthrough now that more time has passed, and then just push through, and then maybe play it with one of my kids.
That's what I did. Like, we got frustrated on that boss. We actually couldn't figure out how to beat it, even with two of us. Looked it up in a walkthrough. I was like, oh, that's how you do it. Oh, that's still really hard to do, but it's impossible with one person, at least for us and how good we are at the game. So we were just like, yeah, let's look this up and do it. But totally worth going back to, especially right now when you're in close quarters with everybody. It's a lot of fun to do stuff together like that. That's kind of like what we like to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I know you've been like reaching out to people virtually also with your activities, just because you and I text, and I know what you've been up to.
Yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy 14 has pretty much been the main thing. Like every day I'm getting on, and like my lunch break, like during lunchtime, I guess I should say, and at night, a lot of times I'll get on and run a dungeon or something with Austin, get some the duties done so that he can move up into the new content easier, because he's playing a bard and DPS queues are insanely long. And since I've been wanting to level up my white mage anyway, it's a good way for me to get quick queues and get experience on that job and move up too. So it really works out for both of us. And also because holy cow, MMOs are a lot more fun with other people. Like having somebody to talk to and just do stuff with is so much better than trying to do it solo. And I kind of forgotten that because it's so easy to solo in Final Fantasy 14, except for and then you have the random duties. It is so much better with people. Like having just one person in there is so much nicer.
Yeah, and I mean, MMOs are a good way to connect right now when you can't go and actually like hang out with people. You can virtually hang out with people.
Yeah, and I mean, it really, really helps. Like, it has been great just for me whenever because I'm playing Final Fantasy X as well, and it's solo, and so I'm still sitting with my Switch in front of my face playing it, like even hiding from my wife like that, where it's not even in a negative way, it's just I'm sitting on the couch with a Switch in my face. So having Final Fantasy 14 makes me kind of speak to other people and actually talk person to person with somebody.
Yeah, that's a good thing right now.
Yeah. Then there's Mario Kart. Like, my nephew got surprised with Mario Kart last night. His mom bought the eShop version of it, the digital version, and surprised him just by playing it when he walked into the room, like she was doing a race. And so it was a great way to surprise him that they got it. And they're setting up multiplayer, so we're going to probably do that today or tonight. We did Mario Party when we had, Jennifer and I had, I think it was him over right before the quarantine stuff started, like the day of or the day before when everybody like really had to hunker down. It was us playing Mario Party, and so it's been great. And Mario Kart Tour actually has the new multiplayer mode in it. Like, it has open to everybody multiplayer, which is legit multiplayer like you were wanting, and you can set up rooms with people. So if you have friends list or anything like that, people on your friends, you can do multiplayer races on your phone with that game, and it's a lot of fun. Like, Jennifer and I just sat on the couch holding our phones playing Mario Kart with each other, like screaming at each other like you do in Mario Kart, but you can now do that just with the app, so it may be something to go back to if you want to interact with other people that way as well, because there's nothing that brings people together like Mario Kart. It fosters harmony and no discord whatsoever.
That's cool. I mean, I'm glad that they finally have like true multiplayer in the phone one.
Yeah.
I just, I went back even after you and I talked a couple times, and I tried it again. I just do not like the controls of the mobile one, but Mario Kart overall is it's such a good game to play right now, right? Especially if you have it on the Switch or the Wii U, or like literally any Mario Kart back to the first one. But yeah, Mario Kart's always a great game to have around and to play with people, especially locally, but even now online, if you're looking to just connect with people because you feel disconnected, it's a good way to just yell at people and like be together.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always a fun yell. Like, it's very rarely, in my experience, an angry yelling at other people.
Good point.
It always has a laugh with it. You may be like swearing at the other person, but you're laughing when you do it.
For sure.
And one of the things, like talking about Mario Kart all the way back to the beginning, is so if you have Nintendo Switch Online, you can go play the original Mario Kart online. You have it in the Super Nintendo stuff and the SNES. So you can both play online and locally with that one if you don't have Mario Kart 8 or anything along the newer ones that you have to actually pay for, like full price.
Yeah, that's really cool.
So that's a lot of fun. And I'll give you credit. Like, I have been actually enjoying Final Fantasy X more than I thought.
Hey, Final Fantasy X is great.
Like, I know it's one of your favorite ones, and it's where you tell people to start in with the series. And I remember going on the Vita and playing it where I just couldn't get into it. It was so slow, and I just could not get myself to play through it. And whenever I bought it on the Switch this last week, I got it for like $7 while they had the Square Enix sale and the credits that I had. I decided I wanted to play it again, and I wanted to see that story, and it's not nearly as slow as I remembered it being, so I'm really invested in the story right now, because all I remember are the big pieces of it. I remember the set pieces and the major plot points, but all of this stuff in between, the character interactions, the ways that the world connects, I don't remember any of that, because the last time that I went through the actual story of this was when it was brand new. Like, I did other stuff over the years, like doing some of the extras and playing 10-2, and then just going and collecting and grinding some for a few years after that. But I haven't actually experienced this story in 19 years. So it's interesting for me to go back and see the stuff I both remember and that is brand new to me, because my memory is completely gone of it.
That's really cool. I'm glad that you like it. Yeah, I always recommend that as a really good place to start Final Fantasy. And I love the battle system in it, because I don't think it's the best in the series, but I think it's one of the ones that's the easiest to like get your head around and onboard people with, because it's truly turn-based. And a lot of the other ones, they have like active time battle, or they have semi-turn based, but it kind of depends on this or that, or there's another tweak to it. And this one, it's like you take a turn, and when it's your turn, you have as much time in the world to think about it as you want, and then you can see whose turns are coming up because it's very easily displayed. So it's a good one to like get your head around all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then you can swap characters in and out of battle whenever you want. Like, I really like being able to, in a turn-based RPG, like it was the same in Dragon Quest XI as well, where whoever you want in your party, you can put in mid-battle. You don't have to go through party management and assume that somebody's going to be lower level than other people, because you can level them up at any point just by pulling them into the party. And it's great, where I'm just like, I'm tired of looking at Tidus do this. I'm going to pull in Auron or something like that. It's a lot of fun, and I've grown as a person because I like Waka now. Like, he does not annoy me. I like the character now. Like, I used to despise him, like really truly despise him. Like, I hated him so much, and now I'm like, oh, I like you. I see why you're talking like this and why you're acting like this. You're not annoying, you're sad. And it was like I'm an adult now, and it's strange to me.
Welcome to adulthood.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's pretty much what I've been doing, just co-op stuff, online stuff, and then hunkering down with Final Fantasy X a lot.
That's not a bad thing. I mean, speaking of, you've been doing a couple of Final Fantasies, this kind of like, social isolation, being in, working from home, it's got me thinking about, I'm contemplating, I should put it that way. I'm contemplating going back and doing a replay through of the Final Fantasy series. I'm not committing to it, but it was one of the things that the first time I did a playthrough, which I know I've mentioned, but it's probably been a while since I mentioned it. So if you guys don't know, I think it was like 2010-ish, I started this project where I was like, I'm going to play through every single Final Fantasy game in order and see what I come up with out of that. And at that point, I had only really played Final Fantasy 7 and above, and it would have been like 7 through 10. I never played 11 because it's an MMO, so I don't count it. And I hadn't played 14 at that point either, and 15 didn't exist. So it was kind of like I had played 7 through 13, and then all of the earlier ones were just a mystery to me. So I went back to the first one, and I played through all of them in order, and it was super interesting to see this series that I love and like how it evolved over time and how it changed. And it gave me such a big appreciation for the series. And it's just, I don't know. I just like the series so much more to see these like through lines and to see where things evolved from, or where they started, or the things that have been there from the very beginning. And I love Final Fantasy so much. It's like one of my all-time favorite video game series at this point. So I want to do it again. I want to go back and replay through. I just don't know when, but I'm starting to get the itch for it,
And I want you to do it because I want you to blog about it on the side. Like, I really want you to put out another of your Final Fantasy projects like you did way back then. You had blogged all about it, and I want to see the comparison of that series playthrough to now, how you have changed as a gamer and what you think about it compared to then.
Well, and I've also had 10 more years of writing experience, so I bet my blog posts would be better.
Yeah, probably so. I mean, I hate going back and looking at blogs I wrote 10 years ago.
It's rough.
They are painful. Yeah. I mean, it got us to where we are now. I mean, that's one of those things that just being a writer, you look at and be like, oh, that stuff's terrible. I wish I'd never published that. But that's what got you to where you learned how to do it, y'all. So don't be embarrassed of it. Just be like, oh, I'm better now. This is what I learned from that. Yeah. And that's why I want to see the extra, or not the extra blogs, but newer ones from you to see where you stand just in that realm too.
I will do it. I'm just not committing to a time frame, but it is something that will happen. And then outside of like thinking about that and seriously thinking about it for the first time in a while, I've been reading a lot more. I haven't been saying every week on the podcast what I'm reading because I'm actually reading a lot more. And I'm finding that as long as I don't feel like a book has to be completely amazing 5-star, I'm more willing to just kind of like churn through a lot more reading, which is probably a good thing for me. So I'm running into a lot that I'm like, oh, that was okay, or this is pretty good, but there's not a lot where I'm like, oh, wow, this is amazing. So I've been trying to hold back, when we do our weekly geekery, and only talk about the ones that I really, really like that I would give like a 5-star rating. And so I finished one of those this week, so I wanted to highlight it. It's called The Ride of a Lifetime, Lessons Learned from 15 Years as CEO of the Walt Disney Company, and it's by Bob Iger. It's so good, and it's an interesting look behind the scenes at Disney and kind of ABC when he was there also before they were acquired by Disney. But beyond that, it's also just as a manager in a company, it's such an interesting book to read through and kind of be like, oh, I see how these things apply directly to my day-to-day life in what I'm doing in my job. So it was two sides of it. It's like a super interesting company, and it's an interesting story of what he's gone through. And then also it's, hey, there's a bunch of management tips in here that I'm like nodding along to, like, oh, I do that, or oh, hey, that's a great idea.
And those are the kind of books that I really, really like getting into, where it's not so much professional development. It's not something that I'm reading to become better at my job or become better even at a hobby, but it's an interesting story that I can then apply something from it, like that. Like, oh, that's a really good idea. I should think about that. I like ideas coming from just around and absorbing them, as opposed to going out like, okay, now I'm going to read a management book, because it's a completely different way of absorbing that information, and it makes a big difference for me being able to apply it.
Well, and he started out as like a PA on a news show or on like a TV show.
Oh.
And that's basically where I started my career too. So I see a lot of similarities on the trajectory. I mean, I'm not going to be CEO of the Disney company, and I'm okay with that. But there are definitely other similarities in there between like his production career, and then he made a switch to management, and then all these things over time. So it's a really, really good book. Again, if you like Disney at all and you want to see behind the scenes, or if you want an interesting story that you can get some like management stuff out of, it's not a management book. It's not, like you were saying, right? Like that's not the point of the book, but there are things in there that you can get out of it.
And I want to read that now. Like the thought of just that book itself. Like I love looks behind the scenes like that, to see where it started, where if it sounds like it's a memoir. Like, is it written like memoir?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's not supposed to be like a full biography or anything, but it's definitely, because a memoir is like a certain period of time, right?
Yeah.
So it's not fully about his life during that time, but it's, focused around his business life over the course of, probably 40 years. So yeah, it's definitely kind of in that vein.
Yeah, see, that's the kind of, I love reading. Memoir is a really, really interesting genre for me. So that sounds like something I could totally listen to, especially. I could also see myself just sitting down and reading this one in hardcover.
Yeah, I read parts of it and I listened to parts of it, and both of them were great. I think listening might have actually been better, but they were both good.
This kind of book usually translates into audio better for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. So that's, like I said, that's one of the few books that I would give like 5 stars that I've read this year. So I had to highlight that. And then I've been playing some board games with my kids. I know I've talked about a lot of them on here in past weeks, but one I don't think I've mentioned on this podcast yet is My Little Scythe. Have you ever played Scythe or looked at My Little Scythe?
I have seen the pictures that you sent me when you were playing it, but I've not played either of them. Okay,
so Scythe it's a good game and it's fun, but the few times that I've gotten to play it, it goes on for a really long time. It's a long game, and it's one where it's not quite a straight up Euro game where you're trying to make an engine and just optimize it, although there's a little bit of that. A lot of it is reacting to what's in front of you and what's on the board and like your character and the board state and stuff like that. And it's fascinating because there's like 8 different tracks that you can do things on, and if you do enough on it, then you get essentially like a point, and then if you get enough points, then you just win the game. So somebody could go for one entire strategy that's different completely from someone else who's playing on the same board. There's just like all these different things where it's almost like you're working towards achievements, and as soon as you have a certain amount of achievements, regardless of what they were, you win the game. And that's kind of the general structure of Scythe. It's a lot more complicated than that, but I'm trying to simplify it. And the thing about it is I like Scythe, but every time I sat down to play it, it probably was like 3 to 4 hour game. And I like the itch that it scratches, but I just don't like committing that much time to a board game. I get antsy after a couple hours sitting down for a board game. And My Little Scythe is like the kids version of it, and it is so good. I love this game. I've been playing it with my kids. It will scratch the exact same itch as Scythe, but you can play it in like 45 minutes tops. It's amazing.
Does it really simplify a lot of the rules and things like that in it? Because I know some of the like kids versions become not even like they become they honestly feel like a dumbed down version, like the Ticket to Ride, was it My First Journey or something like that, feels way too simple compared to the actual board game, which is already pretty easy to pick up. But how does this one compare in terms of mechanics like that? Does it seem too simple almost?
No, it feels... It's definitely more simple, but it's not too simple. It doesn't feel dumbed down. It just feels more approachable, you know? And it's almost like this is a really good base game, and then Scythe is like expanded concepts on top of it, instead of a lot of the other games that you're talking about where it's like they have a good base game and then they have to dumb it down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Where this is something like because Eurogames can be kind of intimidating to get the hang of, like this kind of seems like something that would be an intro to those mechanics and engine building and then move into a full-fledged one.
Yeah, it's really good. So I like My Little Scythe. I can highly recommend it if you're into that type of game. You could watch like a 5-minute video and get an idea of what kind of game it is. It's pretty cool. And then I've been doing a lot of exercise, just like I have this just nervous, anxious energy because of the world at the moment. And I'm not someone who suffers from a lot of anxiety. Like, you know, it's not something that I have a huge problem with, but I definitely, just like anybody, you know, you can get anxious, you can get nervous. So I've been doing a lot more exercising. And I'm trying not to like over exercise because that's bad in its own way. But I would say that before all of these world events started happening, I was averaging maybe like 1 to 3 miles on the treadmill every day. And these days I'm going like 7 to 9 miles every day. And
oh, wow.
I feel a lot better when I do that, when I just burn off some energy and I just kind of zone out for a while.
And I have done the opposite of that, where I have kind of shut down with all of mine, where it's become almost paralyzing, where I'm trying to work through some stuff between depression and anxiety and things like that are going on just with personal life stuff and the world going toward the apocalypse like this. It has paralyzed me, where I need to get to that point and work through my mind of being like, okay, you have to do something instead of just sit here and let the bad stuff roll over you and paralyze you.
Yeah, and it's not like I'm a model of perfection or anything, right? Like I get on the treadmill and half the time I'm pulling out my phone to like look at news that makes me more anxious. But at least I'm not sitting there with like this pit in my stomach. I'm like moving, and it tricks your body into feeling like you're being productive and you're doing something, which I guess you are, right? Exercise is good. Exercise is productive. It makes you healthier. But at least I feel that like physical burn off of anxiety that you get from exercising. And that has been just a huge help to me. I can't even express how much. And then along with that, I've also been trying to do a little bit more yoga just because I'm going longer distances. So I started with doing these like cool down stretches where it's like a 7-minute post run yoga. And then on the days where I go longer, or a day right after I went a really long distance the day before, I've also been doing like 7-minute pre-run yoga. And it's just nice to just like stretch a little bit and do a little bit of light yoga without really committing to like, oh, I'm going to sit down and do yoga for half an hour or an hour. You know, like 7 minutes, I can do that.
And that's one of the things I like about yoga whenever I'm doing it really regularly, is I very rarely sit down for a long period of time and do it. It's that I will throughout the day end up doing a few flows and poses and stretches, where over the course of the day I might get in half an hour or an hour of doing it because I'll sit and do it to relax or something like that.
Yeah. So it's good. Exercising has been great. I hope that the weather gets slightly nicer soon, even though I know we're socially isolating. You can still go outside if it's nice out. Like, you're just not supposed to mingle with people. And
depending on where you are, I actually heard this morning that there were some places in California that were actually closing like hiking trails and parks.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess that's a good point. It depends where you are and what's available.
Your own yard is good, though. Go outside into your own yard and run circles around your house.
Just do laps and then mow the lawn. We're not quite there in Minnesota yet. It's still brown on the ground. The grass is not green yet, but we'll get there.
Ours is growing, and I've not gotten out to do it because this is where allergies hit, and I start getting really itchy outside.
That's fair. Fair enough. And then I've been playing this mobile game called Knighthood, and as far as the mobile game goes, it's pretty good. I mean, it's definitely still a mobile game, but it's one that I was having fun with. There's not a ton to it, but there's enough where I'm enjoying it. Like, I don't even know how to frame this up because mobile games, so many of them have so many similarities to them.
Yeah.
There's two things that I've run into a lot with mobile games is one, they just kill you with currencies, right? There's like a million different currencies that do a million different things and they overwhelm you and it like confuses your brain, but they just want you to spend money. So whenever I hit that point, I bounce off a game. And then another one that I've seen is that a lot of these games that like you and I have liked over time have gotten more and more automated to the point where you're basically never incentivized to actually think. All you ever have to do is auto battle, and then it's more about like the daily grind and just like booting up the game, and you're like, I'm gonna start this battle, and then I'm gonna sit there for like 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna hit a button and start another battle, and then it'll just do it on its own. And
it's a management game at that point. You're it's kind of it's like Football Manager or something like that. You're managing your team rather than playing your team.
So what I like about Knighthood is that it strikes a really good balance where it doesn't feel like just a management game. There are a couple things in there that like after you beat something once, you could go back and automate a little bit, but you're incentivized to like move the story and the progression forward, and every time you're going forward you can't actually auto battle. And I like the battle system. It's a lot of like just tapping and swiping, but there's combos involved, and to actually get the combos decently well you need to actually be like controlling it, because if you auto battle it just won't do it in a smart way. So it's this really interesting incentive where it's like, yeah, if you've absolutely destroyed something and you go way back, you can auto battle. But if you're really like kind of where you should be with the content, you're very incentivized to take over control and actually fight the battles yourself, because you want to get the combos so that you get better results. So yeah, I mean, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I like it. I don't know how long I'll last with it, but if you guys are just kind of looking for new phone games, new things to pick away at, Knighthood is one that I recommend. And it's one of those by King, who also does Candy Crush and a million other games. But you know, they seem to really know what they're doing when they put together their incentive models, because they have all this experience.
And it's a pretty game. I'm looking it up as you're talking about it, and it does look neat. And it's the graphic style is very stylized, and it looks very different from a lot of phone games. So I may have to download this one soon.
Yeah, check it out and see if you like it. I'd be interested to see what you think of it. And then the other thing that honestly, most of my free time, which I haven't had a lot of, I've been reacting to a lot of work things lately, and I just haven't had free time. Even though I've been home for most of it, which is weird to feel so like full of work things, but just be in my house the whole time. But between that, Animal Crossing came out. And so that's kind of what I've been sneaking into all of my free time when I actually have it. And I can't even like express how much of a godsend it was to just have Animal Crossing this weekend to get my brain off of the world. And I like Animal Crossing, right? I don't love Animal Crossing. I'm not one of those people that is obsessed with it or that optimizes everything or that has been looking forward to this game for 3 years. Like, I'm not that person. I'm someone who's a very, very casual fan of Animal Crossing. But right now, where we are politically and geopolitically and with the pandemic and with everything going on, there is like no better game for me than Animal Crossing. And I can't even express like how perfect the timing of this game's release is. Okay, so I have a question about Animal Crossing, right?
Yes, so you should Jennifer's buy it. Well, I've never played an Animal Crossing game. I didn't like the mobile version of it, and I know that is a far cry from what the actual game is, before you even interrupt me with that. But Jennifer was looking for a new game to play, to get into and really dig in. I suggested Animal Crossing because some of her friends have been those people who are waiting for this game for years. And I don't know enough about it to really say other than like it's a life simulator. Like you go around, you set up your town and your house and you do all of this. And like we don't know enough about it, but about just in terms on how to do it. So she started Rhyme instead and has been playing through it, where it's like this adventure puzzler platformer game. And she absolutely adores it. But when she beats it, do you think Animal Crossing is something that she would like based on the ones that you know that she has played in the past with the indie games? Because I think that she might like it, but I also don't know if it's $60 she would like it, you know?
Yeah, I think she might. It has, and none of these is like a good one-to-one, but the kind of game that it is, it's kind of Stardew Valley-ish, kind of Harvest Moon, kind of a little bit Sims-y. Like you're building a house and you're like expanding it and filling it with things, but also none of those things. So it's like it's if you took all of those things and then you like put the kid gloves on for them, where none of them have bad consequences. Because like Stardew Valley, like if you don't do things right, like you can run into, oh, I kind of screwed myself this season. I have to wait for next season to plant this crop or do this thing. And The Sims, you can get yourself into bad situations where you're like, oh, I'm kind of like stuck. This is crazy. At Animal Crossing, that never really happens. Like it's a consequence-free type of game that's in that vein. And it's very approachable. Like you're never really pressured to do anything, but you can do a lot of things. And one of the things that I'm finding in this specific version of it that was one of the reasons I bounced off other versions is that it gives you all of these essentially like achievements. They're in-game achievements, you know, because Nintendo never like does it on a system level.
Yeah.
But it gives you all of these different ideas to do. And if you do them, you like get points, then you can spend the points on things. So for me, that's been a huge thing where I'm like, oh, what do I want to do right now? And I open it up and I go and I look at, they're called Nook Miles. So you go look at your like Nook Miles achievements. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to pick away at this or I'm going to pick away at that thing. And the other thing is that this is the best they've ever done with co-op. Like this has been my lifeline to a bunch of my friends right now, where you're playing Final Fantasy 14. Yeah. I've been playing Animal Crossing, and I've just like, if I'm on at night and I know other people are on, I'll just throw open my gates and then say any friend on my list can come in. And I've had so many people just like come in and check it out and say like hi and drop off a thing. And then you can go and visit other friends too. There was a day where I was going to jump into one of my friends' villages, towns, islands. They're islands in this game. And he had like 10 people there already, or 8 people, whatever the max was. And I was like, wow. And I looked at who it was and I was like, oh, I know all these people because I'm in a Slack channel with all of them. So it's that kind of thing. Like people are being social in there right now because it's this low stakes, very friendly, very approachable way that you can make progress. And the world is very simple and fun and nice, but you can also get together with your friends. So it's been
when you
awesome.
say it's co-op. So when you say it's co-op and you're going in with all these people, I'm assuming that you can't really talk to them like with the way that you do in an MMO because you're not typing in and stuff. I'm assuming there are like emotes and predetermined things that you can say.
No, you can
and then
type.
just interacting with the world.
You can type. So you can type to them.
Can you?
Also, a lot of people I know is just like, let's just jump on Discord or TeamSpeak or my mom is playing this game. My brother's playing this game. Both of my kids are playing this game. So there are nights where we're all on like FaceTime together and we've just been talking and, you know, we're all like, oh, okay, we're going to go visit, my mom's island and we all go over there, that kind of thing. So it's really cool. And everybody can kind of do their own thing or they can come together. But yeah, I mean, you're all just, there's no huge like driving objective that you're working towards. So there's no pressure. It's really just like, go somewhere nice and hang out for a while. The one thing that I would caution you against if you and her are thinking about getting the game, really think about who you want to be like the first player that goes into the game, because only the first player on each switch that starts a game is able to really advance like the main things in the island that make progress. So, and it's stuff like, you have to do a couple things. None of it is huge work, but it's like, if you think that you are casually going to play for like 5 minutes here and there, but Jennifer might sit down and play it for like an hour each night, make sure that she's the first one that creates a character on the island, because then she can kind of like drive the progress of it. And
okay, so it's like, you don't have your own island per account. You have an island per Switch?
Per Switch. Yeah. I don't know why Nintendo did it that way, but they did.
That's interesting. Yeah. Like,
So, like, I have my own island, and then my kids have their own Switch, so they have one island between the two of them. But they knew that my daughter was going to play more, so she's been the first player because she keeps making progress and, like, opening up new things on the island, essentially.
Now I'm really curious because I don't know if I buy it, who would that actually be?
Yeah, you might want to think about it. But the other thing is, if you do have multiple people on it, you can, like, take off the Joy-Cons and you can play together on the same screen.
Really?
Yeah. So it is multiplayer. Like, you could do stuff together.
I didn't know that. I thought it was like Snack World, where you had to have different copies of the game and Switches to be able to play together locally.
No, locally, you don't have to. And there's a lot of options, right? Like my kids have their own Switch. I have mine. Like they've come into the room and they're like, oh, let's do local play. And then we just connect wirelessly over like the local network that the Switches do on their own. And then there are other days where it's like, oh, we all want to jump into like my brother's island. So then we all jump online, even though the three of us are in the same house, and go play with him. So there's options. But like this has been, like I said, it's like the saving grace of the last week for me is to just have Animal Crossing. And it's like the world is simple and it makes sense. And it's obvious what to do to make progress, and there's no pressure to do anything. It's like Animal Crossing is great right now.
That sounds really cool. It makes me think that I might break quarantine and go to Walmart and buy it.
Maybe. And I mean, so Tom Nook, everybody always likes to kid about him being this like slumlord who gets you, he like puts you into debt. And he does, because that's what he does in these games. He's like, oh, let me give you a bigger house. And then he does. And then he's like, okay, that'll be 100,000 bells. Bells are the in-game currency.
Right. Yeah.
Or that'll be 1,000,000 bells. And you're like, what? But the thing is that, I mean, that's true, so I'm not denying that. But Tom Nook gives you a 0 interest loan with no payback timing. So if Tom Nook wants to put me into debt at 0% interest, I will take that. Like, I wish my house in real life had 0% interest with no payment schedule. Like, are you kidding me? That's amazing.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Like, I've been looking at refinancing the mortgage at this point with the Fed lowering interest rates, and looking at refinancing it to a 15-year mortgage. And I'm like, man, I wonder how low my interest rate could get when you put this in the notes. I'm like, oh yeah, I should do that.
You should look at Nook lending. Oh man, I wish it was real.
Man, that would be great. No payback schedule would be awesome.
I would be so interested to see what you and her think of Animal Crossing. Like, I would be endlessly fascinating.
Now. The way that you put it there, I could see myself liking it. I've seen some people on Facebook in different role-playing groups talk about how they like Dragon Quest Builders better because it's a little more interactive. But as much as I like that game, I could really see myself maybe getting into this one.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing with Animal Crossing that to keep in mind that's different from a lot of other games is that it's in real time. So
right.
It's not like a Harvest Moon or a Stardew Valley or The Sims where, okay, let me go to the next day, or how do I advance the day? I want to do the next thing. It's like you go, you play for a little bit, and then you're like, I'm kind of out of things to do for the day. And then you close it down, and then you go back the next day instead. Like in real life, your next day after you as a person have physically slept and woken back up. One of our friends in one of my Slacks was like, how do I advance the day in this game? And people were just like, oh man, guy, you just got to wait. And he's like, okay, how long do I wait? We're like, no, tomorrow, like actual real life tomorrow.
And I've seen articles talking about time travel where you reset the clock on your system to get to different points. And like, I've seen some stuff that people may be getting banned from Nintendo Online for doing that.
Yeah, that used to be a trick in like the GameCube days. I wouldn't do that though. That's not how the game is meant to be played.
Yeah, that is, like you said, that is hardcore. Like, that's somebody who is really wanting some milestones in Animal Crossing and really, really wants to put, like, quote-unquote time into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, okay. That's probably it for this week. You guys, you can always support the podcast on Patreon, patreon.com/geek2geekcast. And don't forget the network. There's lots of things on the network. We have podcasts, we have streamers, we have the Geekery blog, all of it at geek2geekmedia.com. And we'll be back next week with something else while we're all cooped up. We'll figure it out. You guys can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast.
We also have great discussions on Slack, Discord, and Reddit, so you can go to geek2geekmedia.com for the invite links, and while you're there, like you said, make sure that you check out all the other content on the network.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com. You can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter. I'm also on the Disney Forever podcast, where we watch and react to a different Disney movie every week.
And I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's. And you can listen to me even more on the Dragon Quest FM podcast, where we talk about the Dragon Quest series of RPGs.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye, geeks.